Welcome to the Empower Mama podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Watson, mother of two, registered nurse, internationally board certified lactation consultant. I started this podcast as a way to bring together my personal lived experience and my professional experience so that I can come to you from a place of love and understanding and compassion while also providing evidence-based guidance and support. And a disclaimer, I gotta say my disclaimer, this podcast does not replace you being seen and diagnosed and treated by a professional. This is for informational and educational purposes only. So thank you for tuning in, but this is only for education and information. So I made an episode about ADHD and motherhood, and at the end of it, I felt like I just needed to say more. I just felt my spirit just said, I need to say some more. I need to talk about this some more. We need to dive into this another week. So before I dive deep specifically into motherhood and ADHD, I did want to mention it again, the book that I mentioned last week, Scattered Minds by Dr. Gabor Mate. So he is a physician who he himself was diagnosed with ADHD, I believe about in his 40s or so. Could have been a different age, but the point is that he was a full-grown adult when he received his diagnosis. He was already a gynecologist when he received his diagnosis. He's already a physician out in the field. And he even mentioned in the book, he talked about how he would show up late to like meetings and different things in the hospital, and people knew he was going to be late and kind of seemed like a frazzled mess, but like he was going to be there. Well, I don't know if he used those words, frazzled mess. That was my word. But basically in the book, he was just saying that he was going to show up late. People knew he was coming late, but they knew he was going to be great at his job once he got there. But they knew he was going to show up late, and that was just the normal for him. And then his children were also diagnosed with ADHD. So in this book, he is coming, as a person who understands it, for his own lived experience and because of the experience as a parent. And he talks about in here, there's an age-old debate about nature versus nurture. So what would naturally happen to the person, what's ingrained in our DNA and really in the fiber of our being versus what is a result of our environment, how we're raised, what we're taught, what we observe, all those things in our childhood and in any stage of life. Especially children, but most people learn by model behavior, but especially yes, in childhood, that's like the primary method of, learning. That's why this is not a judgment, but to say the thing I heard growing up and that I still hear some parents say, do as I say, not as I do. Honey, is just setting yourself up for stress and failure because children learn by model behavior. But my point with that was that in the book Scattered Minds, Dr. Gabor Mate explores, I'm sorry if I'm hitting my mic, y'all. I'm still getting used to the fact that if I tap the mic while I'm speaking, it's really loud. So, but he explores the fact that it used to be when ADD was looked at as just this like genetic disorder or something, like it's just in the DNA, it's just passed down. But we do also have to look at the nurture component, and it's not to say that parents are bad parents. And I felt like I did a disservice not really explaining that. And that was what really inspired me to make another episode, because I talked about Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. Mate's traumatic experience, being around during the Holocaust as a Jewish boy born to Jewish parents, going through everything that happened with the Holocaust. And like he talked about those types of traumas and just trauma in general. But yeah, just how trauma, because ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, so there was some type of disruption in the quote unquote normal development in childhood. And so his theory, and it does make sense that, yeah, because there's certain events that can, maybe come up in a person's childhood that disrupted their ability to develop these organizational skills that would have ideally been developed. But because that got disruptive, Now, we have a person that struggles with working memory. We have a person that struggles with time blindness. We have a person that struggles with, being able to focus on one task at a time without their mind wandering all over the place, or a person who struggles with having tunnel vision and, being too hyper focused, just not having that balance in how we show up in the focus and the hyperactivity, the anxiety. Another important thing that I learned that I found very interesting was struggles with social anxiety with people that deal with ADHD. That was, again, the past year. There's a lot of new things I learned about ADHD, but that was something I found very interesting. So how does social anxiety relate to motherhood? Why do we care about, any of those things? So dealing with social anxiety, in motherhood, you get placed like because of your kids, like they're going to school, they're making friends, they're doing all these things. So that may come into play, in those situations, and dealing with just general anxiety. So an interesting thing that happened today, at the time of this recording, I'm leading a mom's group at my church, and there was a question in our discussion, what is the thing you love the least about motherhood? And we had some great responses. I mean, it was things that we weren't excited about, but I say great because it just opened up some wonderful dialogue and great conversation, amongst the group. And it was wonderful that everyone was able to be, so vulnerable and open about things that we don't really enjoy about being mothers. And the thing that I mentioned was that I don't get a do-over. Like, this is permanent. I don't get to rewind and try again. It's not like Super Mario. I don't have no extra lives, for mothering. It's just however it's happened, whatever has been done is done. I don't get to go back and try again. And, I don't get to say, hey, kids, sorry, that messed you up. Let's go back to that day and just let mama do it differently, let mama communicate with you different that day, or let me make a different decision and make our lives turn out differently. So, but we don't get to do that. But while I was looking up, I like to link articles and, different information for you all to look over. After listening, I came across an article that says "do-over." Can I have a do-over? And it's a nurse who talks about her journey through motherhood. While as she's an empty nester, she's just looking back with like regret and just wishing she could do some things differently. But she's someone who also deals with ADHD, and she just goes into that journey. So it's an interesting read. So I will have that linked down in the show notes. And then something else I came across is an article titled From Foggy to Focused. So this was written by a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and she talks about breastfeeding while dealing with ADHD and some things I've mentioned before, like those hormonal shifts. So during pregnancy, your body is like high on estrogen to keep that pregnancy going. And then after you have your baby, guess what? It plummets and you're no longer high on estrogen, and your body got to figure out what's going on. But for people with ADHD, those changes, it's a great sensitivity to those changes. And really, it can be challenging for any mother, but especially when we're talking about people dealing with ADHD, the way the brain is designed, a person with ADHD, with that type of neurodevelopmental disorder, the subtle changes and subtle shifts in the hormones and, the hormonal balances and changes in the dopamine and all those things, very sensitive to those changes. And it's even more vital to prioritize things like sleep, rest, making sure you're eating a balanced diet, getting all the, nutrients and everything that you need. And she dives more into some of those things in this article. The psychiatric nurse practitioner that wrote this, her name is Sharonda Donald. And she talks about, the hidden struggles, the stigma We've talked about that a little bit. Impact on hormones, I just mentioned that. Some treatment recommendations. Prioritizing sleep, nutrition and hydration, exercise and movement. Even short walks can improve dopamine levels and reduce brain fog. Brain fog, which, we talk about that mom brain. And honestly, as I'm looking into this, y'all, I'm really sitting here thinking, so how many mamas, because the brain fog, the quote unquote mom brain, happens to a lot of people. Now, I just wonder how many mamas actually have ADHD. Because not every mom deals with that brain fog and things, but it does happen to a lot of mothers. And also, I'm not implying that every mother that experiences brain fog and forgetfulness and, agitation, anxiety, or things during the postpartum period has ADHD. But I just wonder what, I don't know those exact numbers as I'm recording this. And that this is ongoing research for me. Really everything is, right? We should always be learning more and growing more, developing our skill and knowledge more and everything. Just like science itself, there continues to be, more research, more studies as we get more data and all the things, and we get to share more and more new information. And really that is exciting, that we can always learn more about ourselves and how our brains work, and how our bodies work, and how we can best interact with the world around us and all of that. And so she also talks about mindfulness and time blocking, and of course, seeking professional guidance. Now, we talked a little bit about time blocking in the last episode, because I mentioned that is something that has helped me tremendously learning. Actually, I talked about the time. I talked about me setting alarms for everything. I don't actually remember how much I talked about time blocking, but so that's when you block off certain amount of time for a specific task. And I'll say, me being an entrepreneur and a business owner, growing businesses while also working as a nurse and being a single mother, that time blocking is really, really important. And some might hear that and say, well, you should just probably stop doing all those things. Well, I can't stop being a mother. I can't stop working to support my kids. And then, other things that I'm doing are things that I'm passionate about and excited to do. But here's the thing too. I can't let my mind be idle. If I don't have things that I need to show up for, we are worse off, because then I'm even more, I have even more trouble with time and different things if I don't need to show up somewhere at a certain time or do a thing at a certain time, And I don't know if that's an ADHD thing. So it's just that is something that I experienced though. But it is important, mamas, to know that whether or not you may not be just experiencing personality quirks, you might be experiencing ADHD, and you should get that diagnosis and get the support that you need. And so before I dive back into some of these things that are helpful, I did want to mention also the other thing that I kind of misspoke on about myself. So I have sought psychiatry care for myself. I mentioned that I hadn't seen a psychiatrist before, but I saw a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And interesting, now, if you don't know much about nurse practitioners, so nurse practitioners have throughout the nation, the regulations can vary state by state. What nurse practitioners can diagnose and treat for it can vary. What kind of medications they can prescribe. For example, in some states, nurse practitioners cannot prescribe certain levels of narcotics, or maybe they can't prescribe narcotics at all. In any state, in any situation, a nurse practitioner has to have a collaborative relationship with a physician. Usually, I also have discovered that nurse practitioners, because some of them have their own private practices, and I don't, the wording escapes me as I'm recording, but there are some states or some areas where nurse practitioners can work independently of a physician. And I know it can be confusing. Listen, I'm a nurse. I'm in the field and I'm aspiring to be a nurse practitioner, and some of this I still get confused on. So that's why I know is very, very important that the public understands, because if I'm in the field and get tripped up on stuff sometimes, imagine a person. I can only imagine what people who are not in healthcare, what they're going through, trying to keep up and understand all our different titles and things. So in Missouri, where I am, I discovered that because the psych nurse practitioner, she told me she could treat me for ADHD, but she could not diagnose me with ADHD. So I'd have to go to somebody else for that. Well, I've been having trouble getting to a psychiatrist, and so I don't have insurance right now because I'm a contractor. At the time of this recording, I'm a contractor, and I don't have employer sponsored benefits. And so I'm on sliding scales at different facilities, and I've seen the psych NP at one, and they don't have a psychiatrist, and so the other one I'm trying to see a psychiatrist, but I've left messages for people, and and I say that just to share. I know I keep coming on this podcast saying, go to your primary and go to a psychiatrist, go to the psychologist, go see these people. But I want you to understand, again, as I say, when I say I'm coming to you with compassion and understanding, I understand that it can be difficult. Even if you know how to navigate the system, it can be difficult to get to the people. It can still be difficult. So my heart goes out to you. I'm right here with you, and I do understand because I'm running into my own challenges. Getting to the right person to get me an official diagnosis so then somebody can give me better treatment options. But if you're like me and don't have access to medication treatment for ADHD, or if you simply don't want medication treatment, or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding and the stimulants are not safe, or let me rephrase that. Yeah, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, and if you're on a medication that you got to stop because it's not safe during that time, if you don't want to or aren't able to start medications, because of that, there are non-stimulant medications. So these medications would be safer. The stimulants would be, for example, a lot of people know about Adderall. So that is a stimulant. And off the top of my head, I can't remember the ones that would be classified as non-stimulants, but that's something to think about. Because I've had mothers in the past that were taking psych meds, and they just assumed that they couldn't breastfeed, and then nobody had asked them why they were. Nobody had I guess that maybe they didn't have the words or they didn't care. I don't know. But when there was a time I had a mother, I asked her, just for my documentation or to understand where she was, like, oh, like, how did you come to the decision? How did you decide how you were going to feed your baby? And she just said that she didn't think she could breastfeed because of the psych meds she was on, and she needs her meds. And like, that is legit. Hey, take care of your mind. Okay. Like, we want you to go into motherhood with a healthy mind. But my point with all that is, stay with me. It's all coming together. But my point with all that was that even if you're breastfeeding or you're pregnant, there may be medication options for you. But if you don't want the meds, or you and your provider are having trouble figuring out safe options for you, let's talk more about this sleep. Let's talk more about prioritizing sleep. Some of these things, I feel like I say them, and then I know there's a mama listening somewhere that's probably rolling her eyes and like, girl, okay, it sounds nice. But getting more sleep sounds nice. Listen, I understand, because I still struggle some days myself with getting in bed on time, whatever on time is for you based on your life and, how many hours of sleep you typically need. But for me, like, to be like feeling good and like super functional, I need at least 6. I mean, 6 is like a minimum, that's like a minimum amount that would be okay for me. But if I can get 8 or more hours, that'd be magical. But really, like 7 is like, okay, I'm starting to feel like a more functional person, And if I can get naps in throughout the day, even a 10 to 15 minute nap, oh yeah, wonderful. And again, you may be listening to this and wondering how to do this. Well, I'm gonna tell you. So if at work, whatever schedule you have, if like during your lunch break, if you can maybe just take 10 to 15 minutes to nap on your lunch break and then eat, or you have to know how long it takes you to eat your food. I'm just saying, don't say what Vanessa said, I should start taking 45-minute to an hour lunch breaks so I can take a nap. but that's something you could do. Or like a lot of jobs, you get a 30-minute lunch and 2 15s. One of your 15s, go take a 10-minute nap in your car or in the break room, wherever you can like be secluded and, just rest. whatever that looks like. And then maybe my stay-at-home moms, or if you don't work a traditional work schedule, whatever, or just when on your off days, if you're at home with the kids, of course, if your kids are of age where they can safely be left alone while you sleep, yes, let the kids know you're getting ready to take it. Mama is tired. She's about to take a nap. Do not disturb unless the house is burning down. And to really help this work, Mama, make sure everybody's needs are met first. Like, does anybody need a snack? Does anybody need help with, just figuring out what all the kids' needs are before you go lay down, because somebody's going to decide they need something as soon as your door closes. So make sure everybody's needs are met. And, the older kids are left responsible, whatever the age ranges are. But yeah, if your kids can be safely left alone, and whoever the oldest is, they're like the big responsible, like all the little people are going to maybe lean on that one just for a little bit. Even if and just make sure the kids know too, it won't be long. And I always make sure to tell my kids that when I take a nap, like, Mama's taking a short nap. I'll be right back, but I just need like 15 minutes. Like, please leave me alone for 15 minutes. And you're not a bad mom, and it's not wrong to ask your kids to not bother you for 15 minutes. I mean, come on, it's 15 minutes out of 24 hours. So that's sleep. And then movement, activity. Again, this is another one that we can think is hard and challenging to do. But even if you just take like 10 minutes in the morning to listen, sometimes I just walk around my house. I just walk around my house. Okay. You can walk outside, whatever is available to you. And it doesn't have to be some major extra long workout plan, okay? So just that exercise, movement, and this is going to help regulate things, to help with that brain fog. Why does my mouth keep wanting to say frog? I don't know, y'all. Oh my goodness. Brain fog. The brain fog. And then I saw in this article, I read something interesting, ADHD coaching. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, we got a coach for everything, right? And it's not bad. And again, I know if you're like, is that a legit thing? Should I do that? I don't have much to say about ADHD coaching. So I didn't know it was a thing, but there are people that specialize in coaching people with ADHD. I mean, we got life coaches and all the different things, and, whatever your feelings are about coaches. I think, one who is honest, there are some reputable sources for, coaches and things. And then there are some people that are, not, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but there are some people who just aren't people that should be coaching anybody. They're not who they say they are. That's the best way I can describe it right now. They're not who they say they are. But, and I'll say a couple other things, like if you need visual reminder, like I'm a visual person. And again, I just wonder, I don't know, or a lot of ADHD people, visual people, maybe, probably. But, and also I want to say, just because you have ADHD or any neurodevelopment, anything that you experience, anxiety, depression, any of that, that's not the sum of all your personality traits and all of who you are. But I mean, yeah, sure, some of your personality traits could very well be, related to the anxiety, depression, ADHD, or any of that. But give yourself some grace. I think that's the big important thing. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace. You're not perfect. You're not showing up perfect. And really, your kids don't expect you to show up perfect. You might think they expect you to show up perfect, knowing how to do everything, but they don't. They really don't. They just want you to be there. Seriously. Your kids just want to know that you're there and you care, so just start with that. Show up for yourself, show up for the kids. Okay. Another thing I wanted to say, this is another article I'll link is called Overwhelmed Mom Syndrome. I'm laughing. I mean, it's not funny, but it's like overwhelmed mom syndrome. That is, yeah, but they say it's a real thing. I mean, I experienced whatever they're talking about. It's something that cracked me up in this article, y'all. One of these points that says male building up. Most ADHD households struggle with the daily influx of mail, y'all. If you walk to my house, you'll see mail on the arm of the couch and on the dining room table. And so what happens is I just walk in, I set it down, and then I go on about my day. And then some days I walk in and I look at the pile that already exists and I say, okay, today I'm going to immediately open the mail. I'm not going to sit it down because I've done that every other day this week. So today I'm just going to open the mail, and then I do it. And then the papers pile up somewhere that I may or may not see or know about. So this article has some tips to like kind of combat. So I'm not going to go through everything, but for the mail, they just suggested like creating specific piles, like first going through everything immediately, and the junk going, recycle bin or trash, and then separating the other thing, open it all up, separate the other things that are not junk into piles of, like bills to be paid, and then other important things, action items that you need to take. Okay, I didn't read this before I started this, but let me see. Hate laundry. Most individuals with ADHD do. Instead of letting laundry pile up, do one load every morning. That's interesting. Better yet, train the children to do their own. I can't remember to sort, fold, and return clean laundry to the appropriate spots. Put out 2 baskets, one for clean clothes, the other for dirty clothes. Let household members find the clothes they need and deposit soiled ones in the designated basket. I love this idea of one load a day. I had played around with that, but then I just really want to get it all done. But also at the time of this recording, I pay for a laundry service, so I actually don't do the laundry at all. But if I were to not pay for the laundry service, I would definitely do this one load a day method. That sounds refreshing too, because it's just one load. It's not all of it, especially if you're in a house with multiple kids and, multiple adults and everything. That's a lot of laundry. It's a lot of laundry. So yeah, ADHD. I just wanted to pop on and talk about it a little more. I hope I didn't lose y'all. I kind of felt like I was bouncing through topics, but I tried to make sure you knew how they related to each other and understood those things. But basically the gist of the previous episode and this one is that, when it comes to dealing with attention deficit hyperactive disorder and motherhood, just the demands and the responsibilities, the need for organizational skills, skills that have been lacking in people with ADHD, it's challenging to need to show up with those in motherhood. And something else one of these articles said, everything works until it doesn't. And I love how they stated that, because it goes back to that masking that we talked about, that you can pretend to not be struggling until you just can't pretend anymore, until everything's just falling apart. And that usually, or that often happens, when we're having to show up as a mother, because we've stepped into motherhood and we've stepped into all these new responsibilities when we never understood how to deal with the old responsibilities. We hadn't quite figured out how to, do well with just ourselves. And now we have this little person too, and we have to manage ourselves and manage the life of someone who needs a lot of guidance and support, right? So I hope that was helpful today. And the last thing I want to mention is that on March 10th is the National Day of Action for Maternal Mental Health. It's an online advocacy campaign. So I'm going to link that in the show notes as well. And so the point of this taking action is they're supporting 2 programs, the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline, which that hotline provides 24/7 voice and text resources to support moms and families. And the other program is the Maternal Mental Health and Substance Use Disorder Programs, provides education, consultation, and resources to healthcare providers who support mothers, also called the Perinatal Psychiatry Access Programs. And I've been reading a lot about this program, y'all, and I love this so much, because basically with this perinatal psychiatry access programs, these types of programs, provide access for providers throughout the states that are in it. I know for sure my state, Missouri, and next door, Kansas, are a part of these. The psychiatry programs for people to reach out, providers to reach out. So providers who don't specialize in psychiatry, like for example, OBGYNs, they've got a new patient, a pregnant mama who's on a bunch of psych meds and they're not really familiar with like managing, and they don't feel confident in how they're going to show up for this patient. And they can consult with a psychiatrist or they consult with a psychiatry specialist through one of these programs. And that provider can, get get more information, get better equipped. They get just like some general, information, knowledge and tips, evidence-based, of course, information and tips and things to make sure they're giving their patient the right information, the right education, the right support, doing the things that are safest for the mother and the baby and everything. And that is just so phenomenal to me, y'all, that there's this way because here's the deal. Some people assume like you go to a clinic, a hospital, you see the doctor, nurse practitioner, or whoever, and they just know everything about everything. And they most certainly do not. They have their specialties and they know a whole lot about their specialty. And if they're like a family medicine type, they see everybody across the lifespan, a little bit of everything. They still will have like a basic working knowledge of all the systems. But as far as like more advanced knowledge about all the current research and recommendations, the accurate information and things, unless this individual provider as a person made the conscious decision to go do a deep dive on certain topics, they just may not have, all the current information and know the best practices for certain things. And it's not to imply that, they're bad providers, but the point is I'm just bringing to y'all, please remember and understand that providers, anyone in the medical field, we are just people just like you. We are just people. We're just people. We're people who have gone through rigorous programs to obtain licenses and knowledge, and like we are experts, but also we don't know everything under the sun, right? We are continuing to learn and grow as well. Even though we have the expertise, we're still continuing to learn and grow along the way as well. And we can't possibly know everything about every single thing that there is to know. I love this maternal mental health and substance use disorder programs, and as I said, it's also known as the perinatal psychiatry access program. So that and the maternal mental health hotline is what you can support for the National Day of Advocacy. So they've got 3 things that you can do. Contacting your federal elected officials. They've got a whole they'll send out what you can say, how to word everything and do. So it's not too difficult. They kind of do it all for you. And then you just have to be the one to commit to the action of sending that on to your officials. And then share online advocacy tool with your community. So they've got Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram pages. And so you can share things, on your social media. And last, you can make a monetary donation to the cause to support those 2 programs. And I will put the link so you can see all that information yourself, and you can sign up and be a part of that National Day of Action for Maternal Mental Health. As we wrap up, what did we talk about today? So we talked about, we just did a deeper dive of, what ADHD looks like in motherhood and some of the things that you can do. And I'm going to link some of these articles that I mentioned, so you have those to refer to later. And the link to the book Scattered Minds, that'll be down there. It is an Amazon affiliate link, just full disclosure for that. And going into this week, this Friday on March 13th, it's a Friday the 13th again. So we'll be starting a 5-day Bible plan called Rest for the Exhausted Mama's Mind. So we'll be doing that in the YouVersion Bible app. And if you've never used that before, so the way it works is there's a devotion each day, and then there's some scripture, and then there's an area, since we're doing it together, there's an area where we can comment and kind of have conversation about what we've been reading through each day of the devotionals. They are each, it's always like 5 minutes or less, or at the most one could take you 10 minutes. But if you've never done it before, and if you think it's going to be super time consuming, I promise you it doesn't take that long. It really doesn't. That's going to be linked in the show notes. And just as a reminder, if you or someone you know are, struggling mentally, you can always call the National Lifeline at 988. If you are of childbearing age, you're a mama, you're a pregnant mama, you can call the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline, the one that I just mentioned that we are trying to protect and make sure it stays around. You can call that line at 833-852-6262. And if someone is experiencing a psychiatric emergency or a mental health crisis, so this would be if you or someone you know are in immediate risk of hurting yourself or others, please call 911 and ask for a crisis intervention team officer, so then we can get the right help on scene to keep everyone involved safe. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. Please let me know in the comments, leave a review of what you thought about today's episode, at least one thing that stuck out to you. And please share this episode with someone else so that we can continue to have the greatest positive impacts with the greatest number of mamas. Peace and love, y'all.